Good morning. I'm Carol Oettinger, and I'm going to talk today about a story I wrote one time called A Paradise of Pathology. And this is my year in Key West. I went down there because I was married at that point to a Duke art professor who had lived in my house for a while, and he decided that he would go find a place where an artist and a nurse could live together happily. And so he left, and I kept waiting to find out where he was going to find this wonderful place. Well, after about 3 weeks, he called and said, I have found it. And then he said the magic words, I have a job. And that made me very happy. So I had a house, I rented it, and I packed all my things and started on down to Key West. It's quite a trip. You go down through Miami and then through all these 7 mile bridges and then to Key West. And when I got there, I found out that his job was painting pelicans on pieces of driftwood and selling them in the marketplace. He was also living in his van. So the first thing I had to do was find a place to live. Well, I looked in the newspaper, and there was an apartment, so I got us an apartment out right on the tip where there was a sign across the street that said 90 miles to Cuba. And so then I was looking because I didn't want to stay in that place. And I found in what the newspaper they call the mullet wrapper down there, I found a houseboat for sale called Miss Maggie with a little dory, a little rowboat called Jack Pool. Well, I looked at it and fell in love. I had never thought about living in a houseboat, but we moved into Miss Maggie, and it was quite a houseboat. It had a tub on the lower boat and a place to eat and a minuscule refrigerator and sink, and then the second floor had a raised place in the back that we put a mattress there for sleeping, and on the roof I could lie and look at the clouds and the storms come and go. It was a wonderful place to live. And then, of course, I had to get a job, and I did, at the mental health center. And that was not really fun because the people who come to Key West it's the end of the line. There's no place to go unless you swim or take a boat. So there are many weird and wonderful people there. So my job at the mental health center was to see all the people who were alcoholic. There was a man who took care of the alcoholic population. One of my very first people that I had was this wonderful man. When he came in, he took one look at me and said, will you marry me, Carol? And I said, well, unfortunately, I'm married already, but there are so many widows out there who are just dying to get at you, so you start looking around. Well, I found out that his story was sort of a sad one. He had been sent to the mental health center because he was for drunk and disorderly, and was either go to jail or come to the mental health center, so he chose that intelligently. And I found out that he had lived in New York. He had been on a newspaper, and he and his wife, he had retired. He and his wife were driving down to get into their new house that they had bought in Key West, and they had an accident, and his wife was killed. And so he was really sad, and he took to drinking, which he didn't ordinarily do. He actually every time cheers. Every time he came in, he would say that same thing. Well, Carol, will you marry me? And I'd say, look for those widows. Well, after about 3 months, after he had told me his story and taken care of some of the sadness, he did buy it. He came in one day and he said, I found somebody, one of the widows, who doesn't talk about just her grandchildren and her bowels. And so we're going to go around together, and I think we might be an item. One of the things that I had to do at the mental health center, excuse me, was look at the people who were in jail and evaluate them. And the first person I had was a murderer. Actually, he had killed somebody. And the sheriff put his key in the elevator, rode me up to the 3rd floor, and locked me in the cell with this murderer. And there was a policeman outside with a gun. But I thought, Carol, you know you're claustrophobic. And then I thought, why are you here? You're here to interview this man. Let's get to it. So I did. And we talked about what had happened and just about his family and his life. And I did not tell him, but he was really quite sound enough to stand trial. So I told the policeman after 20 minutes or so, and talking to him, and they let me out and they took me down. So on the way down, I said to the sheriff, you know, it'd be nice if from now on you let me interview people in your office instead of in the jail cell. Could we do that? And he said, okay. So actually, let's see, there's so many things that happened that I've got to look. One of the next people that I had was this 15-year-old boy who had taken a whole bottle full of pills because the girl that he asked to go to the prom refused to go with him. And so he got scared and told his parents. So they took him to the hospital and popped his stomach, and so he was referred to the mental health center. So we talked about what had happened, about the girl that he had asked, and about girls in general, and what actually he did for fun in school. And he did have a number of hobbies and interests, and we talked about them and about girls in general. And after 4 or 5 times together, he decided that life was really worth living, and that it was great fun to be alive, and he was just fine. After that, the troubled children were sent to me, and one of the most interesting people I had was, I use names just in general. These weren't the names of the people really, but it was Robert. And he had been a Hollywood producer for many years, and he had lived in Hollywood, and he was homosexual and had a partner, but he had been taking some drugs, and he went cold turkey, which meant he quit all at once. So he was sent to the mental hospital up in Miami, and he told me the story about that too. He said that the people up there were so difficult to deal with, because he tried to start a baseball team, and he put everybody on the base or wherever he wanted them, and they didn't move, they just stayed there. So then he thought, well, it was very hot, and they closed the showers during the day. They were just open early in the morning and late in the afternoon. And so he he asked the authorities if he would get the people to clean up in the showers if they would leave them open. And he said, they said yes, they would. So he got a crew every hour. He'd take 3 or 4 of the guys or with him into the showers to clean up. And so they left the showers open all day. Well, after a very short time, he was well enough to come down, back down. And so he told me his story. Having been a Hollywood producer, at one point he was offered a deal that he said if he took it, he would become a millionaire, but he would lose his soul. And so I said, well, how did you manage that dilemma? He said, well, I went out on a sailboat, and when the boom went across, I didn't move, and it broke both my legs. And I ended up in the hospital for quite some time. And when I got better, my partner and I decided to come down to Key West. And they had enough money, so they started a new store, and it was called Frick and Frack, and it was for antiques and just little interesting things. And they were making a great success of that. And although he did sometimes, and they had a Silver Clown Rolls Royce that he wanted to take me out in, but actually I felt like I was the counselor here, and as much as I wanted to ride in a Silver Cloud Rolls Royce, I didn't take it. And anyway, he said at one point that he needed I had something wrong, and they called the factory in London and asked for this part, and the person said, pre or post-war, please. And so they got the part, and they had it sent to Key West, and they got it fixed. Let's see now. Another, let's see here. My life in the Key West community was also very interesting. We had a small gallery for my husband, Bob, to show his paintings, which really didn't sell because his paintings were kind of sad. And actually, we met the people, the citizens in Key West that way, and it was really fun because everybody you'd meet would say, well, see you at sunset. And at sunset, everybody would go down to the Mallory docks, and the marijuana smoke was so thick that you got a high just being down on the docks. But actually, we'd watch the sun as it dipped into the Gulf of Mexico, and when the last tip went in, everybody would clap, and it really was the best show in town. And off and on, there was what they called the green flash. As it went, the last tip went into the ocean, there would be a green flash, and I did see that several times. Let's see, also, there was one, let's see, there was one woman who had a strange story. She had been adopted by a woman in Miami who then sent her back to another person she had adopted but sent back. Very, very confused story. Well, at this point, the girl who came into my office didn't do anything but cry. And the school counselor had sent her in because she didn't do anything but cry in school. So I finally called the mother and asked her what was going on. And she said that her husband, who was a Navy Shore Patrol person, had insisted that this girl go nude bathing with them, and also had her in the room. The girl was 13, had them in the room when they were having sex, and she was just terrified. And so I got in social services, and I talked to her, to social services, about what could be done. And there was a really good school on the mainland, and that she could get this girl into. So I told the girl about the school, and she said, oh yes, she would love to go. So I planned with social services for her to have an appointment and to bring anything she wanted to take with her in a bag, and that the social services person would take her up to the school. Well, we did, and I called the mother and excuse me, and told her what we had done. And the next morning when I went into my office, there were two people, big people, waiting for me. And the Navy Patrol, Shore Patrol guy had his fist balled up, and he was coming toward me. And I said, we will talk about this in my office. And I went in and sat down behind my desk, and he stood there with his fist balled up. And I was scared, but I said, you know, I'll tell you what, I know you're in the Navy, and if I told your commanding officer what you had been doing with this girl, you would be arrested and in the brig. So I think you better sit down. So he sat, and I told them what I had done, to send the girl to this good school up in Miami, and that the mother eventually would be able to see her, but the Shore Patrol guy was never to go near her again. I said, do you understand that? And he said, yes. And I said, all right, you may go then. And so he got up and left. And so the mother sat and cried. So we talked for a while, and she thought she might never see her daughter again. And I said, you will at some point in time. They would let you come and see her. And in the meantime, see what you can do to deal with this man. Well, actually, I did keep in touch with the mother, and the man did not retaliate. He took my warning seriously. Anyway, these are the stories that I wanted to tell, and my year in Key West was one of the most interesting in my life. I also, I took my bike and rode to the mental health center on my bike every morning, and every afternoon I would ride over to the Atlantic side of the island and go snorkeling. And I had always thought that snorkeling was for the beautiful people. Well, I found out that snorkeling was for me too, and I used to go every day with my fins and my mask, and there I was down there, eye to eye with the fish, and it was such fun. I really got so I liked it, and I did it about every day. And then I would put on my bathrobe and get on my bike and ride back to my Miss Maggie, where I could get in my tub. Couldn't believe there was really a tub on a houseboat. There was. And my year on Miss Maggie in Key West was one of the most interesting of my life.